elections are underway in Lagos State as residents across the 20 local government areas and 37 local council development areas head to the polls to elect their grassroots leaders. From Agege to Ibeju-Lekki and from Surulere to Ekpe, voters are choosing their local government chairpersons and councillors in what is being described as a test of political strength at the grassroots level. The elections cover 20 local government areas, including major urban centers like Alimosho, Mushi, Ikeja, and Lagos Mainland, alongside coastal and suburban zones such as Badagry, Ekpe, and Etiosa. In addition to the local government, elections are also being held in 37 LCDAs, including Oriade, Ojodu, Bariga, Ayobo Ikpaja, Apapa, Igomu, and Ikoyi Obalende. And they were created to bring governance closer to local communities. Election observers are monitoring the process, while LASEC officials and security personnel are stationed across polling units to ensure a smooth exercise. As Lagosians vote to shape the future of local administration, attention now turns to voter turnout, transparency, and timely collation of results. As Lagos State holds its local government elections, attention is turning to the role of chairpersons who will emerge from the polls. What exactly are their responsibility under Nigeria's 1999 Constitution? Local government chairpersons serve as the chief executives of their councils with key responsibilities that directly affect grassroots development. They are tasked with formulating and implementing policies, executing council decisions, and supervising local government staff. Infrastructure development is also a major part of their duty, from constructing inner roads and markets to maintaining drainages and public utilities. Chairpersons also oversee revenue generation, budgeting and management of allocations from state and federal government. In service delivery, they are expected to provide basic amenities, including primary health care, education in partnership with SUBEB, waste disposal, clean water, and registration of births, deaths, and marriages. They also chair the executive committee of the council, providing leadership and direction to their teams. Now, distribution of election materials is currently ongoing at Amuwodofin local government area as ad hoc staff are preparing to move to the 14 local council development areas that make up both Amuwodofin and Oriade. TVC News senior reporter Theophilus Ilama reports that the distribution seems to be going on well, as there has been so far not been a reported case of hitch or misplacement of election materials. Now, accreditation and voting commence at Okepokpo East on Lagos Island, where Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu is expected to cast his ballot. Well, let's bring in a reporter who is on the field right now in one of the local governments in Lagos State, Ola Wakon. He will bring us more update. Ola, tell us where you are and just give us a progress report on what's going on at the polling unit where you are.
Okay, Precious, as I speak with you now, I am at Ikorodu local government, and this is where sensitive materials ad hoc staff were to deploy to 7 wards in Ikorodu Central and 237 polling units. The last batch of ad hoc staff just left a few minutes ago, and I asked the reason why there was a bit of delay, and the reason they gave was that there was a bit of logistics problem, although the sensitive materials were made ready at the time of the logistics was the issue. So the last batch of ad hoc staff just left this place. But before I got in here, I was also at Lagoon View Estate, polling unit 012 Ibeshi Road, where the ad hoc staff were ready and they were already in the midst of They have limited voters and their organization and voting at that particular point. So, as it is, we know that today materials have been deployed to different polling units. Just I'm going to be covering Ikorodu and Ekwe. And we know that over 13,000 polling units, 13,325 precisely polling units in Lagos State, and 376 wards with 7 registered voters. And today, the grassroots people, the citizens of Lagos State are going to make a choice on who minister to local governments or grassroots development in the state. So I've been around, and I could see some of the police officers that have been deployed. You know that 30,000, as it is being specified, security officials have been deployed in Lagos State to ensure that there is peace and orderliness as the exercise goes. So far, the places that I have visited, it's been going smoothly for the delay that occurred here.
If I may quickly come in here, I just want to confirm, because you said that there is a delay in terms of distribution of materials. Some of those materials have now moved. In general, around Ikorodu, do we know if some of those people have started voting, residents have started voting? And then for those that have not started voting, do we know what time they might likely start?
Well, this is dependent on the exact time that the adult staff are going to arrive at their different polling units. Just like I said, that the last batch just left this place. But as I speak with you now, I know that the wards and the polling units are not far apart. So they would have gotten there and they would have settled down, and I'm sure that accreditation would have started and voting would have started, because immediately I leave this place, I'm going to visit some of those polling units and give updates on here. I gathered that the sensitive materials were ready at the time that they needed to be deployed. And, once we got here, they were stranded. And when I asked the reasons, they said because of logistics that some of the drivers didn't get here in time. But it's the good news is that will do local governments sensitive materials, 7 units in the local government central, and 207 polling units to be covered. So I'm sure now that we've all left this place, that the 7 wards have been covered and 237 units have been covered. And accreditation which I am going to still get to those areas to ask but they left the
All right, thank you so much, Awako. That's our reporter live for us in the Ikorodu local government. He's giving us updates as to whether accreditation has started or not. But from what we heard from him, some of those materials, election materials, are now being moved and distributed along several polling units and wards in that local government. There is a delay, and we'll bring you more updates as when accreditation commences in that local government, especially because there's now been a revision in terms of Lagos State has been shut down, you know that, and there's a revision of that time. I was going to give you that update right now. Now, ahead of the local government election in the state, the police command revised the timing for the restriction of vehicular and waterways movement. The restriction in place is to last from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. and not 3 a.m. as earlier announced. The Commissioner of Police, Jimoh Mushood, assured residents of a secure and orderly poll and wants cooperation with security personnel. He also called on residents to report suspicious activities through emergency lines. Now, yesterday, the police command and other security agencies held a show of force in the state ahead of the poll.
Services, Nigerian Navy, Nigerian Air Force, Customs, Road Safety, and others. They are setting out for what the police calls show of force. It's usually a way the security agencies show that they are still in charge in the state. The long vehicular movement drove through Lekki and its environs, heading back to the mainland, particularly Ogba area. The Commissioner of Police, CP Olondare Jimoh, who led the show, says It became necessary given some unruly behavior noticeable during elections.
We are going to go out now. We are going to move throughout the length and breadth of Lagos State jointly to ensure that we send a warning to the who will be perpetrator of disturbance of peace during the election. The deployment covers the period before the election proper, and the post-election period. Because mostly we don't have problems when votings are going on. We usually have issues in the past where election results are being announced. So we are going to stay further. As we start the deployment today, it goes into the announcement of results and aftermath of the announcement of results, which is going to be taken to Monday.
Particularly on what is expected of them during and post-election.
The deployment that we have started today to polling area and to difficult terrain meant to be deployed to secure election material, to secure the electoral official, and to ensure that people come out freely to vote, get to the place on time. Equally, special attention will be paid to physically disadvantaged people, to be given priority in ensuring that they cast their vote on time and they go out to the vote.
He again stressed that vehicular movement has been readjusted to commence at 6 a.m. and end at 3 p.m. on Saturday, July 12, 2025, and not from 3 a.m. as earlier announced.
Again, our reporter, Theophilus, who has been covering Amuwo Odofin, to also give us update on this local government election. Theophilus, what more can you tell us? Where exactly are you now? And also give us a progress report on the process there.
All right, Precious, from what we are seeing, we are at Oriade local government area in Satellite Town. I feel from what you can see, materials are just leaving at this time. My cameraman can pan towards the gate. Election materials are just leaving to the 7 wards in Oriade, a local government area of Satellite Town in Festac here. Materials are just leaving at this time. They've been here for quite a long time trying to sort out the materials. Election ought to have started at this time. It's past 9 a.m. and in about the 7 wards in Oriade and many other areas, the elections have not started because materials haven't gotten to the different polling units. Not just here, even at Amuwo Odofin local government where we just came from, we saw a lot of this same thing happen. People still sorting out the materials. Whereas everyone came in quite early to sort their materials, but the reason they are getting to this point, going at this time, many of us are. It's a question that has not been answered. The answer has not been given to us yet. Of course, we've seen security officials here today. They were here earlier trying to keep the peace and ensure that everything goes on well. But as you can see behind me, materials are still leaving at this time. Many haven't even gone to their vehicles. There are a lot of buses outside that have been waiting since. Many have not left here since, and they are just about leaving here to their various local government areas. And it's a situation that begs a lot of questions. Precious.
Theophilus, I wonder, really it does, because this is a local government election conducted by the state and not even a federal election. So one is wondering why. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. This is TVC News, and you are watching our coverage of the local government elections here in Lagos. Local government elections are happening in 20 local governments and 37 LCDAs in Lagos. So we're bringing you update from every local government and every LCDA. So far, what we know is that in some local governments, like we got update from Ikorodu and Oriade, materials are now just being distributed. But let's look at all of this and then what this means for public trust in local government and the call for autonomy and what all of that means. Public affairs analyst Femi Lawson joins me in the studio. Good to have you join us.
Good morning, Precious.
Before we even get to the very fundamental of the local government, I just wanted to get to your thought on this, because we are quick to criticize INEC in terms of distribution of materials. We're quick to say, well, it's not, but that's Nigeria. We're talking about 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. This is a state. We understand. We took a report from Olawakon Ikorodu and a reporter Theophilus Elama also in Oriade. And here they have said, look, I mean, you saw those clips. Materials, they're just now picking up those materials from the local government to distribute to polling units. So what do you make of that? Really late.
Well, thank you. I think one of the factors responsible for, in my opinion, this delayed distribution of material must have been that earlier announcement of restriction of movement. You know, the Lagos State Electoral Commission, LASEC, rely mostly as part of their logistics on public transport. You know, some of these vehicles are sourced from transporters, many of whom have to report, you know, to the election offices this morning. That nonetheless, between my residence and the studio, I witnessed distribution of materials in places like Egbedimo, Alimosho. I saw Ikeja, I saw Nibombo, Iru Victoria Island, but at the time I was on Amadu Bello Way, even voting has commenced. So there are actually some local government where distribution of voting materials were timely. But I think the delayed logistic must have been responsible for that delayed distribution, especially when it has to do with transportation of these voting materials to their various polling units.
But is that really an excuse? Because it was the end time of the restriction that was revised. It was supposed to end at 3 a.m. It was revised to 3 p.m. But the 6 a.m. was set. And
the restriction, the restriction earlier was supposed to commence by 3 a.m. Not 6 a.m.
Not 6 a.m., but now 6 a.m.
So a lot of people have to wait, you know, thinking, you know,
it was 3 a.m. But for ad hoc staff, my understanding is that they are picked up. All right, and for vehicles that are used, you know, for election purposes, they have tax.
They are often picked up from the local government offices where the Lagos State Independent Electoral Commission offices are situated. You know, these are people who have to come from their various residences, from the various communities to the, you know, the local government offices of this Electoral Commission, pick up these materials, then get transported to the, and this is not even alien, especially when you look at our electoral system generally. It is not the first time. But I think what is important is that for areas where there is a delay, where there are delays rather in the distribution of material, LASEC should be considering an extension in time already provided for the closure of polls, because you cannot close polls in same places where elections started 8, 9 a.m. with the same places where it's going to start about 10, sometimes 11 a.m.
And that's my worry, because, you know, I was looking at the 3 p.m., you know, close time, and I'm wondering, shouldn't we have extended? Shouldn't have been, like we do for the general election, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Shouldn't that have been, I mean, you're sure that you can accommodate more people within that time, and then you have limited movement. You're not managing movement, you're also not managing the polls, because it's the same security. And the reason we shut down is because of security, I believe. And so why not extend to at least 6 p.m.?
It is still early in the day, and I don't think LASEC will overlook this. It's not impossible that in the next couple of hours we find LASEC coming out to extend voting time in those places where there have been late delivery of. I
am not even talking about voting time, which most times, you know, the idea is once you're on the queue, you will vote no matter what time it ends. But I'm also just looking at the restriction of movement. Why didn't we extend to 6 p.m. to be able to manage
I don't think restricted movement ordinarily shouldn't even be part of our electoral system, if not for the security challenges we have, because election is purely a civil process. When it is not war, it is not curfew. Why should people be restricted? For instance, there are people who have lived in Ikeja, who have relocated to Egbeda, who are anxious of voting in this election. By the restriction of this movement, they have been denied of their franchise. Normally, there are elections, you don't even talk about United States, Europe, even in Africa. The election days where you don't actually know elections are going on until you get closer to the polling booth. So it is not a culture that we should even entrench or encourage. Our elections should be as civil as you can vote in your marketplace in Ikeja. You should be able to vote in Akpogbo where you trade. You should be able to vote around your office here when you work, not necessarily being restricted to your residences on election day. So the need for an extension of restriction, I don't think it's necessary, because we should be looking forward to a time where we will now begin to vote like a Christmas day, where you can just walk freely, get to where you want to vote,
and the question would be whether we are there. But let's get update from our reporter as well, Solomon Ajizu, who is also live for us to bring us updates. Solomon, give us update as to where you are, and if if the process has commenced, where you are.
Well, here I am inside Ogudu GRA, where you have 5 polling units. You have two polling units at Ogudu Grammar School, junior and senior grammar schools. You have polling units 40 and 41. And then here, exactly where I am standing, is Muri Folami Salahuddin Akao Junction, where you have also two polling units. It's supposed to be 42 and 43 right here. And there have been some mild drama. People have come out here to vote. The voting, the accreditation before voting has started a little behind schedule, 1 hour, 15 minutes later than it should have started. But the people have come out here to vote. They are on the queue. But the little drama here is that they've been having challenges locating exactly where they should be voting, because I understand that they were supposed to have polling units 42 and 43 here, but a little bit of confusion as the people wait to vote. Some of them are struggling to locate their names, and so what you see is the movement of some of the voting materials. The polling officers who were here before have had to switch position with the other ones on the other side. So the voters are swapping polling units. The polling officers are also swapping polling units. I guess they've been able to sort out the matter to be sure that they are in the right places. So these are two of the polling units here. We've been to two earlier in the grammar school, and then there is another one on the end of the street, 5 of them within this GRA. While these people are out here to vote, enthusiastically to vote for their preferred candidates, some people are taking all the time in the world to be jogging and exercising. You will expect that on a day like this, when people are out voting, the people will not spend so much time jogging, running all over the place. Hopefully, they too will get into the house, take some shower, and probably come out to vote. I hope they take this seriously. But that's where we are now, accreditation before voting, and we are waiting for the first voter to cast the ballot here while the polling officers sort out the matter.
Solomon, I saw people cycling this morning on my way to work, so I'm sure people are taking advantage of the no vehicular movement to carry out one form of exercise or the other. But I also wanted to find out what you're hearing from the voters in terms of that delay. How are they responding to the delay?
Well, so imagine that we got to the polling unit here, 42 and 43, and there were some people waiting. In fact, there was a lady waiting here, and then on the other side under the tree, there was another man who was struggling with his walking. He uses crutches to help himself. He was already there before the polling officers arrived. And so that sends a sort of message about the people here who seem to really want to vote. Unlike what you hear that our local government elections, people are not enthusiastic about it. But it's a bit of surprise for me here inside the GRA, where initially when we entered, we thought, oh, looks like a ghost town. People are locked up in their houses. But here we are. They are beginning to come out 1 hour, 30 minutes after. They are waiting for the polling officers who seem, well, I guess sometimes the polling officers are probably the ones who are slow now because the people are out to vote.
Which is, I mean, we would say, even though we would say that's not a good record for LASEC, but for the people, I mean, it shows participatory democracy. But in terms of security, what more can you also tell us?
Well, you know, earlier I reported whether you call this a coincidence of location, where the headquarters of the Koshofel local government, where you have the RAC, is directly opposite Area H police headquarters here in Ogudu. And from Area H, all of the coordinating for security is done from there, where we saw men of the Nigerian police, men of immigration, road safety. Even we had soldiers, OP Mesa, who also came around. Here, it's quite a very civilized environment. It's a peaceful environment. this is not one of the places, the GRA in Ogudu is not one of the places where you worry so much about security. It's a very secure place, even though you have police officers here who are watching, keeping watch over everything. But it seems that the people here are actually owning the elections for themselves, and they have elected to be peaceful and ensure that their votes count.
Solomon, it's interesting to see that people are turning out to vote, and they are turning up just even before election ad hoc staff. Thank you so much, our senior correspondent Solomon Ajuzeku, for that update. All right, let me get back to you, Femi Lawson. Again, the same report from Coach Affair. He's at Ogudu, and accreditation has started, but there had to be a swap of polling units, because there's a polling unit, I think he said 42 and 43, but there was an error, and so they had to then swap. But there's a delay of about an hour and 30 minutes. Are you worried about voter apathy?
It's a major issue in local government elections, particularly. Like I observed during my tour here this morning, I realized that a lot of our people don't take seriously what is supposed to be the most serious elections to them. I know for sure that there are people in communities in Ikorodu, Ekpe, Badagry, Alimosho, who will not have anything to do with the state government secretariat in Alausa for 4 or 5 years. Obviously, because the closest government to these communities is the grassroots government represented by the local government. But unfortunately, this restriction of movement, this election day, has become an opportunity for most of this population of people to cycle, to play soccer on the streets, to jog and do at the detriment of an exercise that should have been taken more seriously than even every other elections. And this will tell in the outcome of our election. And you are worried that even in our general elections, you realize that the turnout is not only unimpressive, it is ridiculous. Ridiculous to because a lot of times I don't even like citing examples of places like US where about 45%, 50% of population come out to vote in the elections. Even in a country like Ghana, you find not less than 30, 33% of their population coming to participate in their elections. But in our own case, not up to 10% of our population of 240 million participate in our elections because of the complacency on the part of our people. So it is worrisome that what ordinarily our people should take more seriously is not even being taken seriously. And that is why we find even the voting demography that should be more committed about these elections on the street playing soccer and cycling. So
let's talk about why people are not taking it seriously. Because it was as a result of the electoral reforms in 1976 that came about the local government, and by 1979 it had gained constitutional status. But in your own opinion, since 1979, if we were to do a very objective analysis, what impact would you say the local governments have made in the lives of those in their local government?
Between the time that the local government system came into being and at least 1998, the local government was a very significant level of government in Nigeria. I'm talking of up till even 1999, 2000. In actual fact, during the 1998, 99, preparatory to the general election, there were local government elections conducted by the then INEC. There were serious competitions, serious interest to the extent that even opposition political parties won elections in states governed by one political party or the other, not just in the Southwest, across the country. But in this regard, we have gone to a situation whereby the idea that took the administration of the local government system and the election of local government into the hands of the state has almost crippled the existence of the local government. In the past, prior to 1999-2000, in fact, the local government was so sensitive and significant to the extent that there is hardly any streets, road within your communities that were constructed by the state government. Especially those Tronxy, street roads, community road, water project. They were mainly things that we saw the local government doing. In actual, it is very strange then to see a state government coming to to do things that have to do with market. But today,
and that's what we have now. But let me put you on hold. I understand that we're now joined by Jide Ojo from Abuja studio, and he's also a public affairs analyst. Good to have you join us, Dr. Jide Ojo. I mean, I'm having this conversation with Femi Lawson here in the studio about why the impact of the local government elections, and perhaps that is linked to why people don't turn out to vote. But why do you think that the local governments are now looking like the unfortunate orphans in the tiers of government, tier of government?
Thank you, my sister. I listened to Mr. Femi Lawson, and he's quite spot on with the challenges of conducting local government elections in Nigeria. When people don't see the impact of governance at the grassroots, they don't want to participate. It's not a rocket science. And aside from lack of governance, or good governance as we may want to put it, it also boils down to a number of other factors. The shutdown of the economy because of election affects voter turnout. Historically, I don't know, I've been privileged to observe elections across many jurisdictions, including the United States of America. And I never knew, elections in America will hold the first Tuesday in November of every election year. In Ghana, the election day is even in the Constitution of Ghana, which is December 7th of the election year. Whether it falls on a Monday or on Sunday or Saturday or on any other day of the week, election will go on. But in our own climb, we have elections for 6 hours, when other climes, they have elections for between 10 to 12 hours. We shut down our economy, when in other climes, election goes and people can go to work even after casting their ballot or on their way to office or when they are back from the office. But this whole thing is not there. Then there is also the challenge of election workers. The hundreds of thousands of ad hoc staff that have been recruited by LASEC in Lagos, for instance, will not have opportunity to vote. The security agencies who are policing the election will not have opportunity to vote. The election observers who are observing the election will not have opportunity to vote. Your colleagues and yourself, who are media practitioners who have been accredited to observe the election, will not have opportunity to vote. In other climes, including Ghana, including Kenya, including several other African countries, you have what is called provision for early voting. Early voting provision is for you to vote like about a week to the election, as it were. Assuming that there is an opportunity for all of you who are on election duty today, from civil society organizations to media, journalists who are monitoring, who are observing the elections, to the polling agents, down to security agents, and then the ad hoc staff in their hundreds of thousands. Assuming that they have cast their ballot a week to today, you could have seen a significant improvement. So these are some of the factors that have affected and will continue to affect our voter turnout. So unless we do the needful, do what other countries are doing. When I went to Egypt to observe election in 2014, my dear sister, elections hold in Egypt for 12 hours, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And even at night, it's like broad daylight because everywhere is well lit. An election takes place inside a classroom. And, there is a perimeter fencing around the schools that are used for elections so that, there is a proper security cordon around that place. So when we talk about voter apathy, low voter turnout, it's a function of all of these variables I've talked to you about. There are many people who could not collect their PVCs because INEC stopped the distribution of PVCs way back in 2022, ahead of 2023 elections. And INEC has not started the distribution of PVCs now. So a lot of occupational mobility, geographical mobility, people have had to relocate either into or out of Lagos. People have misplaced their PVC, and since you cannot vote unless there's a PVC, and even LASEC is not authorized by law to have its own voters register. It relies on INEC's voters register. LASEC is not
Dr.
allowed to register
if I may
political
come in
parties
here,
themselves.
If I may come in here, the perception, you know, I understand that all of the factors you have mentioned also contribute, but doesn't the perception of the relevance of the local government also contribute to this? Because we know that when it comes to general election, people turn out much more than what we've seen on the queue. It is still low in terms of voter turnout, but compared to what we have seen on the queue this morning for local government elections, people turn out. Gubernatorial elections, people turn out much more than this. And so it doesn't mean that people think, look, if you're not relevant to me, why should I turn out to vote? And then again, the credibility of the process.
Well, again, you are on point, but what I feel, and this is why I'm saying what I'm saying, is that local governance system is almost absent. I've lived in Lagos before I moved to Abuja. I lived in the Ipaja area of Lagos for 2 years, and I do know that about that time that I was living in Lagos, there's almost a total absence of local governance system at that point. We do not have good roads. We do not have water. There was practically a lack of absence of governance, local governance system in the Ipaja-Ayobo axis of Lagos at that time. I'm talking about 2000 to 2003. So, you know, I don't know what the situation is around about this time, but that I'm not sure the situation have changed much. And so then you also must put the blame partly on the part of the political parties. I understand there are 15 political parties that are contesting today's election. How much voter mobilization did these parties themselves do? Did they create the needed awareness? Are they part of the mobilization? You know, in our jurisprudence, I don't know about LASEC law, but I do know that for general election, campaign stops on Thursday preceding the Saturday that election will hold. They said 24 hours. But that seems like 48 hours to me, because if they say campaign will stop at Thursday preceding Saturday that the election will hold. But whatever it is, what is expected of political parties and candidates is to engage in voter mobilization. If they need to support their supporters and to support providing logistics for their supporters, let them do so. Unfortunately, the issue about locking down the economy of the states will impact on that, because there is no movement of vehicles. So even if the candidates and political parties are ready to provide buses to convey some of their supporters who are registered in long-distance places to go and vote, there will be restriction. They cannot move. And that's why it's counterproductive to lock down the economy because of election. It's very, very counterproductive. Why are you deploying so many security personnel when you say there is an election? Election is not a war. It's not a fight. If the security agencies do their intelligence gathering very well, they will know areas that are prone to violence and be able to deploy more personnel to contain preempt and contain such. But situation where you just lock down the entire state for about 12 hours because of an election that's supposed to hold. Now, you have not factored people who registered in their places of work, but who live far away. We do know that Lagos, just like Abuja, where I'm talking to you, have two populations. There is a day population in Lagos. There is a night population in Lagos. There are those who live in Ogun State that are working in Lagos. And so on a day like this, they are resting at home. People who live across Songo, people who are in the redemption camp, Ibafu, and all of that. You know, many of them work in Lagos, but they will not be able to vote, and they registered there. So you need to also, and those who even work within Lagos, who live within Lagos. Imagine me when I was working in Lagos. I was living in Ikpaja, but my place of work was at Bode Thomas in Surulere. So, assuming that I registered in Surulere where I was working, how will I be able to navigate from Ikpaja to Surulere on a day like this? When usually at that time I take about 3 vehicles.
But Dr. Dido, let me bring the conversation to Femi Lawson. Apologies for interrupting you, because he was talking about, again, the lockdown of the economy during the election and how it impacts on voter turnout. And he was saying, if you work, for example, he was giving an example when he was in Lagos. He lives in Surulere but works in Ikpaja. And so if you register in Ikpaja, and so how do you show up? But one would imagine that you register where you live, because again, this is the local government that affects you directly in terms of where you live and not where. I mean, where you live is more important than where you work, I want to believe.
Not
I want to say, no, I say that because, yes, where you work is important, but where you live is where, in terms of power supply, good roads, that's where you live, and you want to come up to good roads and good power supply. But my point really is this. If the local government were allowed to function the way they should function, it had really made impact. Because remember in the 90s, I mean, this was not a conversation in the 90s.
At all.
They were really effective in the 90s. And so people would show up to vote. It was war then in the 90s. It was so important. And so I'm wondering, isn't that also one of the reasons we're seeing voter apathy? If people don't feel like you're relevant to them, that in fact, sometimes people don't even know their local government chairman. And so would that not also affect voter apathy?
Sincerely, just like you said, I can confidently say an average of about 70% of our people don't even know who their local government elected representatives are. The chairman, in actual fact, the councillor representing my ward after the last election only came to show up about 13 days ago, prior to this election. I never even knew he was still the councillor, because he took the mandate about 3 years ago, went, and election about 13 days away, he came back to canvass for support. That is how irrelevant the local government system has become, because in the real sense of it, we were not really bothered about its existence or not around, because the local government was not actually providing any service any longer, other than taking taxes that are due to them, and in some cases coming to do things on behalf of the state government. Unlike, just like you said in the 90s, when a grader comes into your community, you know it is the local government. The primary school system, in actual fact, nobody knew where the state secretariat of this and that were. You talk about environmental sanitation, you talk about the market. The local government was so prominent as far as our being citizens were concerned. But it has gotten to a point where it looks like even people seeking borehole, something as ridiculous as what even volunteers provide for community, they are calling on the state government. People are talking about drainage. You are seeing the Commission for Environment coming to your community to talk about drainage. Where is your local government? That the Commission for Environment has to leave, allows us to come and talk about the drainage in your community. That is how bad it has gotten.
I was going to say that when we see great as this, you're wondering, is it state, is it federal, is it NDDC, is it World Bank? Because now it's not even the local government most times.
Yes.
But let's take a break. When we return, we'll continue this conversation on the relevance and the autonomy of local government in Nigeria. Stay with us, everyone. All right, thanks for staying with us. You're watching TVC News. This is our live coverage of the local government elections here in Lagos. We understand that in some local governments, accreditation has begun. We spoke to a senior correspondent, Solomon Ajizoku, who is in Koshofe local government area. He is at the GRO area of Ogudu. Polling unit 42 and 43, accreditation has begun in those polling units. But in Ikorodu, we also spoke to a senior reporter, Lawako, who mentioned that at that time we spoke to him, materials were just leaving just not being distributed to polling units. And then also at Oreade local government as well, where materials were just leaving at the time we spoke to our senior reporter, Theophilus Elama. We're staying on local governments in Lagos and LCDAs. We'll continue to bring you updates. But in the studio, we've been having a conversation on this election and local government, the relevance and impact of local governments in Nigeria so far. We've been speaking with public affairs analyst Femi Lawson, who has joined us, who is joining us in the studio. We've also been speaking with Dr. Jide Ojo, who is in Abuja studio, also a public affairs analyst. But now we're joined by, we now have a lawyer in between, all of this to give us the legal perspective to all of this. You know him, Jide Ologun. Good to have you join us as always.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So we have Femi, you're alone in this conversation. We have two Jides. So you have to prove yourself. All right. So let me bring you in now, Mr. Jide Ologun. We've been speaking to the impact and relevance of local governments in Nigeria. But let's talk about the autonomy, because one of the issues that Mr. Femi Lawson raised is the fact that some of the projects that are supposed to be executed by local governments are now being executed by or carried out by state governments. For example, you see markets, you see them cleaning up markets. The trucks that come to my area, for example, I know are supervised by the state government. Is autonomy actually a myth?
Thank you very much. I think what has brought this mix is the revenue aspect of the responsibilities. Basically, before what the present president moved for, which is the autonomy and direct release of allocation of funds from the federation account to the local government, in section 162 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, there was this joint account between the state and the local government areas where the governors get the funds and release what should be released to the local government. But the Supreme Court is saying, no, let's stop that. Send it directly to the local government. And it is expected that that funds will be used for development at that third tier of government, which is the grassroots. But what we found out is that even though yesterday, July 11, 2025, is the first year anniversary of that landmark decision of the Supreme Court, the decision is yet to be implemented. Because as soon as that decision was taken, the governors went in to conference with the president and started negotiation. About 3 months moratorium was given, starting from August 2024. In the course of that, CBN came up with a proviso that you must open a special account with CBN before the Accountant General can release the money. And one of the conditions is that you provide 2-year audited account from the local government. So until now, that decision of the Supreme Court has not been implemented, and it's of serious concern to some of us. But then, about 4.5 trillion naira has been released to state governors. You see, so you now begin to find out what happens to development at the grassroots level. And we hope that coming out of these elections, that some states, we have local governments that are bold enough to say, let's have this, because those issues can be resolved. So what we have been reading about is either the Minister of Finance is blaming the Attorney General, Attorney General is blaming the Accountant General, and so these bureaucratic stumbling blocks, they are not necessary, and it speaks to the weak respect to the rule of law that we have. Because since 1963, when we became a republic, Nigeria has the Supreme Court as the highest court in the land. So if a decision came from the Supreme Court and the justices all agreed that it must take immediate effect and now it has not been implemented. Someone should have gone back to the court to file for contempt of court, but it appears that...
And who will that person be? Because first of all, it's the local governments, maybe themselves, who would go to the court and say, oh, we're fighting for contempt. But we know how it goes at that level. But let's talk about the audited accounts that you mentioned. I'm not sure if any one of them has provided that. But just looking at that process of the audited account, is there any accountability at that level? Is there any system of accountability at the local government level?
Obviously, there isn't much to talk about, because if that were to be present, the audited accounts would have been released. All right, and it speaks to something. If you understand the political realm in Nigeria, if the local government chairman goes to the governor that, Oga, they say we should bring audited account, the man will tell you, go ahead, give them. So in your audited account, you will tell the federal government that even though 76 trillion got released to local government, governor took 52. So we still have a long way to go in giving the due respect to accountability, which is a strong pillar in good governance. And what Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says is that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. So, and that is why also you don't see the humongous amount released reflecting in development at the local level. You see, because it's as if some stakeholders just sit down there and say, so it's a matter of serious concern to us. And if the local government should be relevant, it means that we should have requisite development in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations at the grassroots level. See, I mean, like I address our leaders, they go abroad. I was in Elcom Village in Maryland in the USA, and I had to ask my nephew that, why are you describing to this place as a village?
I mean,
that is their own nomenclature, because I mean,
it's called a village, but it's even more urban than some urban areas in Nigeria. Area. But let me bring you in again. Accountability at that level. The councillors are the ones that we have not even mentioned in this conversation, because they are supposed to be like the House of Assembly, for the local government. There is supposed to be that oversight as well by the councillors, but I mean, that is also missing. And in fact, we say people don't even know their local government chairman, but for the councillors, they're almost non-existent. You only hear them, oh, we're voting how many councillors during the election, and that's it, and that's where it ends.
Just like I made an example of my own ward councillor, who I last saw 3 years ago until 13 days ago, while seeking re-election. You see, the legislative arm of the local government is a reflection of what is typically obtainable in most of the state assemblies in Nigeria. If you look at most state house of assemblies in Nigeria, except for very few, maybe like Lagos and some few other states, they are practically appendages of the office of the governor. In actual fact, some assemblies cannot actually function without going to say good morning to His Excellency. So that is what typically obtains in most of the local government, where this legislative virtually exists, because a lot of them were handpicked, and more so the local government have no serious function.
Almost like a compensation.
So they have no serious function.
You've been there, so let's compensate you with
the legislature have to oversee. Because what are they overseeing? Because even the executive has no little job or none to do than paying salaries and getting little taxes, as the case may be. And to support Mr. Logon's position, you see, the autonomy will continue to remain a ruling of the Supreme Court until we advance it beyond that July 2024 judgment. And why it is very commendable for President Tinubu to have taken that radical decision of, no, let's give autonomy to the local government by going to the Supreme Court to challenge, the release of funds to local government. The government must go further in addressing that section 162, which is a constitutional issue. Until that joint account is abrogated, You cannot just sit in the Supreme Court and declare that they should be paying local government. So when in your constitution it is clearly stated, your constitution has created a joint allocation account for state and local government. So the government, the federal government, particularly President Bola Tinubu, must go further in ensuring an abrogation of that section of the constitution. And that is why I had expected that after that ruling of the Supreme Court, the Attorney General would have approached the National Assembly or the President, as the case may be, to address that section that created that joint allocation account. Because that account is still existing by the virtue of our constitution. And this local government will continue to be impotent, they will not function, and the legislative arm, just like you asked, we have no job to do than to take salaries and impress, as the case may be, go on trips, trainings, and whatever is agreeable to them from the purse of the local government. Because in the real sense, what is the local government in Nigeria doing today that the legislative arm is overseeing? Are they constructing roads? Are they embarking on projects? Even the primary health care centers. You see governors building health care centers in your ward. So the local government have become virtually impotent because everything that used to be the job of, in those days we go to health centers, local government. In fact, some of them were situated within local government secretariats. We go there, primary schools, nobody even knew about state. SUBEB was not even in existence then. Graders come to your community. The market, you will not even hear. Environmental officers were from local government. So these are the jobs that the legislative arm of the local government should have been overseeing. But there's no job. It is now an office of the councillor where you seek election every 3 years and wait for the next 3 years to come and campaign and get elected into the office again. Not because there's any serious job to be done by this legislative arm. Let
me bring in Dr. Jide Ojo from Abuja studio. Just going through this conversation, Dr. Jide, one of the things that come to me is, again, how we pick people who run for local government chairmen, if that can even drive accountability, because when you find that most of these positions are basically compensation, based. You worked for me, in the last election as governor, or I find you loyal, and so let me reward you or let me compensate you with this position. And so, I mean, you wouldn't want to go against somebody who has given you a position as a reward. You find them even, look at what's happened in Ogun State, for example. A local government chairman was removed, and then you found that the others, were literally apologizing to the state governor at the time. And so what do you make of this, and whether we can actually drive accountability at that level?
Thank you. The problem is more deep-rooted than my colleagues in the studio in Lagos are even trying to make it. It stems from even the constitution of the State Independent Electoral Commissions. This is a constitutional body, but routinely being dissolved by His Excellency across the country. When the governor assumes office, the first casualty is to dissolve the State Independent Electoral Commission. And this is the body that organizes election. That body is not properly funded. They are more like ad hoc. Look at what just happened in Rivers State, where the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission was dissolved, and a new one was empowered by the sole administrator. Now, that is the root cause. Meanwhile, what I learned from the recently screened and approved members of the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commissions was that none of the members is from Rivers State. So the sole administrator went and shopped for people outside of Rivers State to come and conduct election for Rivers State. That is number one. Number two issue about this accountability we're talking about is, how do you expect the local government chairperson to bring 2-year auditor report when he's not the one that is actually in control of the resources? Let's start from Lagos, where you are talking with me. Lagos set a pace in 2002 by establishing 37 LCDAs. Any one of us here on this panel asked the question, how are these 37 LCDAs being funded since 2002? That started 23 years ago. How have they been funded? It is when the money from the federation account comes into the joint state local government accounts that it is redistributed. And for Lagos, Lagos will only get money for 20 local governments that are recognized by the Constitution of the Federal Republic. And then when this money gets into the joint state local government account, the governor or the committee he may have set up will redistribute this money to 57 places. So at the end of the day, what goes to these local government chairpersons is insignificant and cannot even pay salaries. And meanwhile, all the constitutional responsibilities that are listed in Schedule 4 of the Constitution that is meant to be carried out by local government are now being usurped by the state government and its agencies. So these are the problems. These are the problems. The good news is that for Lagos, it even have a 4-year tenure, and the only other state that have a 4-year tenure for its local government system is FCT, Abuja, which is just a newcomer. They are going to be having their election in February 2026 to be in consonance with this 4-year tenure. All other states, in some other states, you even have a local government tenure being 2 years. There was a ridiculous case years back in Nasarawa State, adjoining state to us in FCT here, where the local government tenure is 1 year. What do you do? What will you do in 1 year? Now I think they have amended their state electoral law to allow for 3-year tenure. So what usually happens across many states is that when you spend 1 year conducting election in a 3-year tenure, you spend so much to win your election. Of course, when you spend so much, what you want to do is to recoup your investment. And because you want to go for re-election, you want to have as much resources to be able to contest in the next round of election. Meanwhile, you have maximum of 2 tenure if you are a local government chairperson. And for you as a councillor, you can be there for life if you get re-elected, because for parliamentary position or for legislative positions, there is no term limit. That's why you have someone like Senator Ali Ndume, who has been in the National Assembly since 1999. Someone like Senator, former President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, has been there since 1999. Maybe first as House of Reps member, then moving to Senate, has been there. There's one honorable member from Delta States who I learned has been in the National Assembly record 6 times. From 1999, the man has been there, successively winning election, but you never get to know him. So for these people who are seeking re-election, when you have a very short-lived tenure, you will not be able to recoup your electoral expenses before the next round election. And that's why issues around corruption and opacity in governance manifest. So there are myriads of problems. I agree. You know, the whole essence, the thought process that made our framers of law of our constitution to say there should be joint state and local government account is because the state government is also supposed to chip its own resources to augment whatever is coming from the federal. But rather than doing that, what we have seen is that the state government will not even put its own resources, but will also mismanage the resources on behalf of the local government.
Let me take this conversation to the lawyer, because, I mean, it has a legal perspective to it, that joint account. And he makes a really good point. And then, look, the idea of the joint account was actually supposed to be, well, have a joint account because you have access to resources. You can add more to it to augment what we have given you, and not necessarily to even now usurp what we have already given to them. And I wanted to speak to that as well.
Thank you. In public relations, you talk about stakeholders' engagement. The Nigerian democracy is unique. And I love the brilliant expression of referring to these processes as investment. So there are election practitioners. There are professional politicians. That is the business they do. And they have their stakeholders committee that must be maintained for them to upscale their career. And it's all about money. I said it earlier today. There may be some local governments that pay non-staff members of the local government on a monthly basis. Those guys just sit in their homes, they are chieftains of parties, and they get paid. From what? Money. From money that should be used to develop. You see? So these are issues. It's not about the law. The intention of the law was clear. Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says clearly that the security and the welfare of the citizens shall be the primary purpose of government. And rising from that primary mandate, we now look at the national level of national development, the state level, the regional level, the local government level, which is the grassroots. So it's the same assignment. So what do you mean by allocation? You allocate resources to carry out the development. But when other interests come in, you know how much it is now to even obtain a form to contest in a party. You know how much it is to sustain the party. And recently in the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike challenged the title of PDP in respect of their secretariat that had not paid their ground rent. You see, so we have this heavy monetization that has challenged the spirit of the Constitution. The Constitution is for development, and that is why it's difficult. So we have exalted politics above governance, because when you talk about good governance, it's all about managing the resources in a way that you create commonwealth for common good. But here we are now, and you can see it. It's obvious.
But I want to take that up with Femi Lawson in a moment. But I also wanted to ask you, because he raised the point about amending that particular section of the Constitution, almost as though the Supreme Court judgment negates, what the Constitution says. And I want to, get your clarification on that.
It did not negate it. If we go that way, then we are only saying that the Supreme Court probably has wasted time. By virtue of Section 4 of the Constitution of Nigeria, the National Assembly and the House of Assembly, they make laws, the legislators. By virtue of Section 5, the President is vested with the executive power to manage the country. By virtue of Section 6, judiciary is to interpret. So it's for the judiciary to interpret. And the interpretation came to the point that, okay, at this point in time, let there be direct allocation. It's only when we have now failed to execute that decision of the Supreme Court that you may now go back to the National Assembly and say, okay, you now amend. And the big question is that if it is even amended and it's not carried out, what happens? So we need to move beyond that. The decision of Supreme Court should be enough. They've interpreted the laws and
that's the big question, because you can have, I'm just following up on what he said and what, Dr. Jide said. You can have, separate accounts that has now been advocated. But he mentioned, look, some people are also receiving salaries and not, workers, in the local government. I mean, non-state, exactly, state actors and non-state actors. And that in itself has to pose a challenge too, that no matter how much you give to the local government chairman, if some of these issues are not resolved in terms of our politics, they cannot have true autonomy.
Well, for me, I think political patronage is as old as politics itself, and it's not peculiar to our country. In most democracies, in most society where politicians, run government, there will always be patronage for political actors. Everybody cannot get appointment. Everybody cannot be contractors. There are ways government naturally settles and takes care of, especially people who are within the political party structures that produces the government. It is not alien, but that must not be the priority of states. That must not be the priority of any government.
But it seems like a priority of Mr. Femi Lawson, because we've seen some people suffer and almost lose, some have even lost, their position just because they were not servicing what do we now call? Is it oligarchs? I'm going to call them. You know, the hierarchy of the party. And I mean, should that be it? Shouldn't the priority also be that, you know, if I fix roads, you're going to benefit from it as well?
The priority should be the welfare of the state, the welfare of the people, not the welfare of. You see, these people, they are very.
So let me put you on hold. I will let you finish your thought. We need to get updates from our senior correspondent, Doja Salamadini, who's standing by for us. Doja, tell us where you are now, and also give us a progress report.
Okay, I'm at Okepopo East, Ward 06, where Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu will be exercising his franchise alongside his wife. And of course, this place is getting fuller than what it was this morning, and we've seen eligible voters coming around to cast their ballots. Accreditation and voting are going on simultaneously. But there's no queue yet because the whole place is free. You come in, voters come in, eligible voters come in, go in, get their ballot paper after showing their PVC, and they've seen their names on the registered paper, and then they go in, they get the slip, cast their ballots, thumbprint into the cubicle, and then they will also put their ballots into different boxes for chairmanship or for councillorship candidates of their choice. But on the ballot papers, I've seen only 4 political parties on the ballot papers. I've seen AA, I've seen APC, I've seen PDP, and one other party. But the Lagos State Electoral Commission last year has said that there are 15 political parties across Lagos State for these elections, with more than 7 million eligible voters across the state. But in this polling unit that Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu will be casting his ballot alongside his wife, there are 624 eligible registered voters in this polling unit, and we've been seeing the elderly coming out to vote. Only few young people really that are coming out to vote. Like I asked some people, and they told me that they will soon come out. That I mean, the day is still very young. The election will end around 3 p.m. So they are still coming out. So we want to make sure that there is no voters' apathy in this election. But we've seen elderly people. We're yet to see young people coming out to cast their ballots, really. And we've seen electoral officers assisting the aged ones, and also people with disabilities to help them to navigate how they will cast their ballots. I've seen security people, I've seen the policemen coming around to check, because don't forget that this is where the #1 citizen of Lagos State will be casting his ballot. So security should be watertight as well. So, pretty good. Everywhere is cool. The weather is favorable, and then the process is seems to be very seamless. Within a minute, they are done. Within a minute.
And do we know when? Do we know when the governor and his wife will be showing up to vote?
Yes, Governor Sanwo-Olu and his wife, Ibijoke, any moment from now, journalists are standing by to, see them. And that moment, they should arrive at this polling unit to cast their ballots.
You have talked about people who, you said the process it's been free and fair, it's been easy. But is that because people are not showing up, or is that because the ease of voting and how quick it takes? Because you said there is no one on the queue. Is that because people are not showing up, or because the process is easy?
Well, there is no queue at all. I must let you know. People are just coming in, cast their votes, and then they leave. Some decide, they decided to stay back. To stay back, probably. To see the governor, I know. But as I said, I asked someone that why are people not really coming out, and he said the day is still very young, and they might come out, any moment. After all, the voting will end at 3 p.m. today. So we're still expecting them, but we've seen the elderly the elderly coming out to vote.
And perhaps the presence of the governor and his wife will also bring more people to the polling unit as well. But Dr. also I know you've mentioned security as well, and that's for the governor. But just in general, talk to us about the security arrangement around that polling unit.
Okay, so the security arrangement is pretty good, because we've seen some policemen around, and then some of them are outside. My cameraman is giving me a sign probably to show you where policemen are stationed here at Ward 06 on Lagos Island, Adeniji Adele, precisely on Okepopo East. Some of them are outside there waiting for the convoy of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and his wife, the First Lady of Lagos State, Ibijoke Claudiana Sanwo-Olu. They just want to make sure that everything is going smoothly and effortlessly. And then we've seen them with their gadgets, we've seen them well kitted, and we just hope that after the governor leaves, they will still be around, you know, so that it won't be just for the governor alone, but other voters also need to be well secured. I mean, the polling unit needs to be well secured, the polling booths need to be well secured. So they're there waiting for the governor, and some of them are also seated here at looking at the process, really.
And Dodger, I'm sure that we will get back to you as soon as the governor arrives with his wife to vote. Thank you so much for that update. Our senior correspondent, Adedoja Salam Adeniyi, who is, everyone is now waiting for the governor to come and vote, and I'm sure that his presence will bring in, other voters as well. But let's continue with our conversation in the studio. You were, speaking to the issue of, sorting out party hierarchy from local government funds.
Yeah, like I said, that shouldn't be the priority of state. It shouldn't be the priority of any administration, be it state or local government, because why they are elected is to serve the purpose of the people, the welfare of the people. And even if there will be patronage for politicians who have made it possible for them to get to this position, that should not in any way affect the core responsibility of this local. But why this local government seems not to be functioning, it's not because of how much political godfathers, contractors, party men get. In most cases, having closely observed the political system, particularly in this part of the country, you realize that maybe until Christmas, there are festivities, or during some key event, this local government even really patronizes, their members. That's why they bring out foodstuffs, bring out gifts, bring out hampers. But on a day-to-day basis, what do they do with the resources of this local government? Virtually nothing significant, because even the resources are not available. In fact, there are states in Nigeria that have outsourced the collection of fees due to local government to contract to consultants, which now goes to the purse of the local state government. And now, some part of it given back to the local government. These are taxes that are supposed to be directly collected by the local government. So this local government, in the reasons of it, are not so empowered enough to even run the affairs of the local government. Talk less of patronizing, politicians or party members or political godfathers, as the case may be. If the local government are empowered enough, for instance, for a local government in Lagos, I don't think there's any amount of patronage that a local government like Apapa can give to party members or political godfathers that should affect the performance of that local government in terms of its capacity to generate resources. But most of this ability to generate resources have been taken away from them. It is now in the hands of the state. The Ministry of Environment is doing environmental sanitation. The Ministry of Commerce and Industry is overseeing the market with some associations, and all sort of, hijack of the purposes of local government, which is now the norm in the country.
Let me bring in Dr. Jide into the conversation, because we can talk about whether state governors are giving the room for this local government chairman to function. But Dr. Jide, there are also local government chairmen in this country who local government chairman of one, local government, but live in another. I mean, they don't live in the local government where they are supposed to be living in. And if you don't live there, how do you know the needs of the people? Some of them live in highbrow areas in their state, but their local governments, they have abandoned. I only go there once in a while to check in. I mean, that attitude also speaks to why we are where we are in terms of local government administration, doesn't it?
It does, my dear sister, but let me also put the issues in context for you. Do you know, on a very sad note, very sad note, do you know that just last week, was it this week or last week, that's when the workers in the local government, in the area councils of FCT just returned to work after 3 months of shutdown, because the area councils here could not pay the 70,000 minimum wage. It is that bad. And I listened to my colleagues at the studio there. They are very much on point with the challenge of local government governance system. It is true what my namesake, Elder Jide, is saying there about some people who who are non-state actors, who are not workers of local government, but get paid from the local government. They are more or less like ghost workers, but they are very significant. Their children get paid. They don't have offices there, but they just part the nominal role of the local government. But that is even on one hand. On the other hand, and coming to your question, my dear, the point is, why many councillors and chairmen will not live in their council areas is because they are choked by demands by party members and by neighbors and by people who are in their constituencies. Imagine if even to aspire to be a councillor in your local government, you become an honorable, and people start milling around you and billing you. How much more if you become a councillor, if you are elected a councillor, and you are living within the neighborhood? Before you wake up in the morning, as early as 5, you will have seen about 20, 30 people queuing up to see you for one thing or the other. And their children are sick, the wife is in the hospital, and they are about to marry a new wife. Come and sponsor me on pilgrimage to Mecca or to Jerusalem. All of these things, where would the councillor get the resources to pay such bills? Even chairman of the council, they have to run. I've interacted with these people. They will tell you to your face that it's too demanding. The people, the constituents are too demanding of them. And that is even at the grassroots level. How much more people in the State House of Assembly, people who are in the Federal House of Rep, and the people who are in the Senate, the same challenge they face. They cannot fence off the people, and people will mill around them, demanding for perks, even when they know that these people cannot afford. And that is why there is a serious challenge about accountability. How will you get, how much is a salary of a councillor? Maybe he's earning 1.2 million. But on daily basis, he's having demands exceeding 3 million for him to meet. So he will have to steal the resources of the council. Otherwise, he will have to snub quite a number of them, and they will tell him, you will not come back. And that's how they will lose elections. So those who are master of the game will find an extra and creative ways to meet those bills, to meet those demands. Because if you fail to do, I've interacted with an honorable member of the State House of Assembly who told me that a constituency, one of the godfathers in our constituency, was demanding sponsorship for holy pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And he said, where would she get the money? Where would she get the money? She does not have a budget and all of that. They say, oh, okay, but don't come to us during the next round of elections. So how do the system has choked political office holders? A governor can even fence himself around with security details so that they don't have access to him. But even at that, he knows how much he has to spend on goodwills, on supporting, you know, members of different non-state actors within the state. But for these councillors, these chairmen, the reason why they take a flight and not live within the councils where they are elected is because of these extra budgetary demands that they find difficult to meet. Imagine somebody saying, oh, my in-law just died. The burial is next weekend. I'm expecting a cow from you. I'm expecting you to give me a live band. I'm expecting you to do this. And it's not just one person making that demands of you. There are several others who will tell you, I made you the councillor, I made you the chairman of the council. So if you are not ready to pay, well, somebody else will be asked to replace you. And that's why we
But Dr. D, let me bring that conversation to the studio, because I really want us to explore that. I want us to explore that, because really it's almost seeming like a case of the chicken and the egg for me. Which comes first? Are people demanding because they have not seen your impact, so give me mine? So I can't see what you're doing. If I see you in implementing projects, I would know that you're actually using the money for something. But if I can't see anything, so give me mine. Or is it that people, they are not implementing because of these demands?
It's the structure. You know, there was a time I was moving to New York from Abu Dhabi. And there was this documentary on Sheikh Zayed, the founding father of the modern UAE. I was engrossed in it for hours. That was when he was to be 100 or so. Sheikh Zayed said that wealth is not money, but developing people. So he rallied his team to engage the oil money of the UAE and the money they borrow, everything, to develop the people. So these people do not live under a dependent economy. So you don't need a House of Rest member to pay for the naming ceremony of your child. You see, and that is why the wise men came out to say, it is better to teach a man to fish than to give him fish to eat. And that is why some of us spoke against palliatives. You see, that is the issue. The same thing Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. That, hey, let's develop our people. Let us develop capacity. Let us create a wealth magnet locally that will attract foreign direct investment. But in an environment where over what percentage of citizens are in the poverty bracket, then they will come and knock at your door.
Dr. Jide, I'm sorry, Mr. Jide, let me put you on hold as we get update from the Oshodi Solo local government, where we have our reporter Olamide Adeyemi standing by. Olamide, that's a populated environment as well, and a very busy one at that. Give us update on voter turnout at Oshodi Solo.
Right, first, good morning, I will say. I'm currently at Oshodi Solo local government area, Oyetaya Street, to be specific. But currently, the distribution of election materials is still ongoing in the local government secretariat. But just before I came to Oshodi, I was at Ikeja, and from what I observed, I saw that there was a low voter turnout in many of the polling units. Some persons will say it's still quite early to say that it's a low voter turnout. So we'll wait out to see what's going to happen there. There was also a mix-up, discrepancies in polling unit number, ward number, and all of that, especially at an area in Orego where we had 2 officers in charge of just one polling unit. And so I said that I spoke to them, and they said that LASEC officers were on it. I also spoke to the LASEC PRO, who also said that it was a slight issue, something that could be rectified. For people who know Lagos very well, you know that these locations, Ikeja and also they are quite strategic. And one would expect that, because this is the closest election to the grassroots, or the closest, that the people can vote, where they can make decisions for themselves also through the leaders that they will elect, who will have a high voter turnout. But from what I've noticed, people have not really turned up as we expected. And that's why I said it's possible that we will see more of them later in the day. Also,
it's still early.
At the fact that, right.
Olamide, I wanted to also ask you, because Oshodi Solo also has a very large population of young people. You see them from time to time as you move around that area. In terms of the voting population and age group, give us just an update and of your observation as to who has turned up the most to vote.
Okay, so while I was also speaking, it's not some of them, some of the youth, passed behind me. They were also mentioning things like, let's go and vote. They were saying that in the Yoruba language. But like I said earlier, they're actually distributing election material. So some of them are just leaving. I mean, ad hoc officials are just leaving the local government to some of these wards, which some of them will take about, 10 minutes. So I would say election has not actually started. It's just, tables that have, certified that election will start in some of these areas. But for now, we're still waiting to finish the distribution of some of these materials. Like I was talking about Ikeja, knowing the fact that it is a very, strategic hub in terms of commerce, business, and it's also, the office of the state governor. We're expecting that there will be more turnout later in the day. But that's what we have for now.
But was any reason given for the delay in the distribution of materials?
Okay, so I spoke to LASEC PRO, Stephen Ojo, who said that they have done their job. Speaking with the chairman, even from days before, she mentioned that sensitive materials had already been distributed and non-sensitive materials. And so I would say probably the problem is from the local government offices here. So there was no reason exactly given as to why it was late. But even if some of these, materials were coming out late, we still did not see people, standing around the polling units, waiting to perhaps make their vote and all of that, showing enthusiasm about this vote. To some people, I think it's a rest day for them. All the way from Ikeja to down here, you could see many young persons, playing football, some of them just playing on the streets. And so it seems like an off day for many persons. I'll give you an update when I get, more about
absolutely, Olamide. Thank you so much for that, and we'll come back to you when the process commences in those polling units. A reporter live for us at Oshodi Solo local government area, where she has been monitoring the exercise. She has reported that there's been a delay in the distribution of materials. Olamide Adeyemi live for us there. But let's bring the conversation back to the studio. I will let you finish your thought before we take on some of these issues raised.
Thank you very much. I've read about 2 senators coming out to say that even the 21 million naira per annum is too low for them. Reasons given is that when they go to their constituencies, they feel like running back.
Myriads of needs.
Because there are needs waiting for them. And that is not the way to go. You need to empower the people. What is prosperity? Prosperity is empowering the people to vacate the sense of insecurity.
But let me bring that, because it brings to mind the issue of the councillors. We know that they are the legislative arm, but there's also supposed to be the lobbying. They're also supposed to be like the lobbyists who lobby the state chairman to say, look, there's this road in my ward that needs attention, or there is this school in my ward that needs attention, but I'm not sure that they have been relevant in that regard.
There's no way they can be relevant. Let me even pick it from where Rabbi Salomo stopped. The truth is that, from my experience and engagement, particularly at the civil society level, you realize that most of the times that citizens approach politicians and why politicians have to run away from their constituency. You are chairman in Ikeja, you live in Lekki, and the likes. It's basically because of the failure of the states, you understand, to actually provide the basic needs of the people. Of every 10 people that calls a councillor, a chairman, one House of Assembly member for assistance on a daily basis, it's not usually about, I want to have a naming ceremony or the burial of my grandfather. Somebody is saying, oh, my child needs to go to the hospital, my child has been sent away from school. And why do we have this reoccurring? Because the basic care centers are no longer available. If the state has been responsible enough, you can easily, as a councillor, as a chairman, refer anybody who calls you that his child is sick to take such to a basic health center in your community. The public school systems are still functional. Why do you need to go and pay 100, 150,000, 200,000 for your primary school child in a private school in Alimosho? But because of the failure of the local government and of course other institutions of the state to provide the basic necessities for our citizens, people now have to rely on, scavenging, begging, for these same people who have failed to do their job. People have to beg from them to ensure that their child has to pay a fee, they have to settle hospital bill. My wife gave birth to twins, she has not been discharged. These are things, a governor once told us in this country, precisely Governor Mimiko of Ondo State, on how it took only 6,000 naira to deliver a woman through cesarean section. That's all. But today people go to the hospital, pay as much as 250,000 for cesarean section because a woman has to deliver. So the state has to be functional before you can, stop blaming the people from, putting pressure on this political class. And for the councillors, it is difficult for my councillor to attract development into my... I said in the last 6 years, I don't want to exaggerate, no grader has been seen in any community in my neighborhood.
Well, yours is 6 years.
If you have seen a grader...
mine is longer than that.
If you have seen a grader, that grader must have been brought maybe by a CDA or an individual who is just developing a property.
And that's another challenge because there are issues where...
Who is the chairman that the councillor wants to invite?
Sometimes you have, industries that want to, in those localities that want to develop roads. We understand that sometimes they are charged. That the local government chairman will say, go and bring so and so amount of money.
They are prevented.
To develop
forcefully.
Roads. But I wanted to quickly ask you on the issue of, before I will just have 2 minutes, I will give you a minute, please permit me, because I also want to get a final word from Dr. Jide Ojo. How should a local government chairman be removed? Some of them are removed arbitrarily. We've seen state houses of assemblies trying to remove a local government chairman in different states in this country. I just want to quickly get that, your thought on that quickly.
We've been told over the years that you wait till the next election to remove the officer there. But because of exalting political power over the rule of law, you've seen governors destabilizing. You saw what happened in Rivers State. The sole administrator came, sent all of them packing and everything. And that's why we must redefine and get our ways back to respecting the rule of law and make the officials accountable. Like you brilliantly mentioned, if the government at any level is resolute about developing the country, you tell the citizens who are coming to disturb you that, no, this is what we want to do. But we have a classical experience where a governor perhaps decided to embark on mega development and the electorate, the big wigs in the party said, no, he's not servicing us, he's not getting second term. And so was it. So we need to decide exactly what we want. Is it good governance or politics? All right,
let me quickly get that. Dr. Jide Ojo, the last 1 minute to you before we wrap.
See, our local government system needs to be overhauled. I went to a public primary school in Ibadan. I don't know whether that school is still in existence. Our local government system cannot even attract the best skilled labor. There are supposed to be engineers working in local government. There are supposed to be teachers. There are supposed to be medical personnel, doctors, nurses, and all kinds of people. But because of the collapse of the structure at the local government, it becomes extremely difficult to attract the best hands because even I realized that while the whole advocacy around local government autonomy was going on, some labor unions were against it. They said they don't want the local government to pay their salaries because they always owe them. And then
Dr. Jide Ojo, my apologies.
Of chairman is not ideal.
Thank you so much for your time. My apologies, I had to quickly butt in. Our time is up. We've been speaking on, the local government elections here in Lagos and just generally the relevance and impact and the autonomy for local government in Nigeria. We've been speaking with public affairs analyst Femi Lawson, who joined us in the studio. Also lawyer Jide Ologun, who also joined us in the studio. And from our Abuja studio, also public affairs analyst Dr. Jide Ojo. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm sure you're still with us, for this election. But, let's, just before I go, let's tell you that the LASEC chairman has visited the first polling unit at Yaba St. Timothy College, Ward G, and he's there to examine the process there and assess, how it is ongoing. Right, that's it. We will continue our coverage on the local government elections here in Lagos. What we've gotten so far, it's that distribution of materials is still ongoing in some local governments. How they can meet up remains to be seen, but we'll continue to bring you updates. Thank you so much for watching. I am Precious Amayo.